Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast, Control or Be Controlled. This podcast is designed to help you start thinking differently and take control of your life. And I remain your host, Darlington Obuka. Today's guest is Regina Huber, transformational leadership coach, speaker, and CEO of Transform Your Performance. With leadership experience across 5 continents and a background at the Boston Consulting Group, she brings a global, unconventional approach to leadership, blending mindsets, heartsets, and personal freedom. She's also the author of Speak Up, Stand Out and Shine, and the host of the Rise to Lead podcast. Regina, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Darlington. I actually have a newer book as well. It's called Living My Freaking Amazing Life, just to add that on. And thanks for having me on.
So thank you very much. So before we get into it, Regina, can you please introduce yourself to my audience?
Can you repeat that question for a moment? Sorry.
I said before we get into it, can you
Yeah.
please introduce yourself to my audience?
Oh, yes, sure. So I'm Regina Huber, as you have already heard. I'm originally from Germany, have lived on several different continents, and traveled quite a bit. Also on the African continent, I've spent about probably 8 months in total on that continent. I have quite eclectic experience in several different countries and language zones, both as an employee in leadership roles and also as a business owner. I owned businesses, for example, brick and mortar businesses in those cases in Brazil and Argentina. And my current coaching, speaking, and training business, Transform Your Performance, is based in New York City. And yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's get into it. I have some questions here for you, and I'm sure my audience would like to know the answers to these questions as well. So looking at your journey across 5 continents, what experiences most shaped who you have become as a leader and a coach?
Well, I think it's really observing people and learning from them, and at the same time also being adaptable, right? And really soaking everything in a way, but not becoming someone else through that. So it's really important to distinguish between adaptability and losing discernment about what's right for you. So you always want to keep that discernment, and you will always stay true to yourself, because that's what leaders do. Also, they are authentic, right? In at least sustainably effective leaders, they need to be authentic, because otherwise, at some point, they will not be able to maintain their leadership presence and the perception that they want to transmit. So the what I've learned is a lot of different things, really, different leadership styles that I have observed, and that's given me also the opportunity to then carve out my own and develop my own style, because I don't have to model other, or I don't have to copy other people, right? I don't necessarily need one role model, but I can learn from a lot of people and use my discernment to then decide what is right for me, what is aligned with who I am as a leader and with my values, and then leave the rest to one side.
Thank you very much. So, can you walk us through your powerful leadership transformation framework and how it works in practice?
Which one? The trans Sorry,
Can you walk us
the
through,
connection a little is not perfect, so I apologize for
can you
asking
walk us
again.
through your powerful leadership transformation framework?
Oh, yes, absolutely. My powerful leadership transformation framework is very much about self-leadership. It was my first framework, the first framework that I have developed for my coaching business. And it has 4 elements, and they are a self-empowering mindset and heart set. The second element is, or pillars, you could say, is distinctive uniqueness, which is all about your unique brilliance and also our shortcomings that we want to work on and that we want to develop, right? That we have to develop skills. We don't need to be great at everything because different people are great at different things, which is how it's meant to be. However, there are certainly skills like communication skills or interpersonal skills that we all need. And so these are examples of what definitely we need to work on if they are not at the level we want them to be. And then the third pillar is a body and energy conscious presence. We talk a lot about leader presence, executive presence, and business presence, but what is that really? So I believe that there's a very important element that's not talked about enough, and that is our body and our energy, especially in our presence. And that's what that pillar is about. And then the fourth pillar is about inspiring and effective action, and that's pretty much a result of the other 3.
Okay, that's wonderful. So you always emphasize more on both mindset and heart set. So tell us, why isn't mindset alone enough for modern leadership?
Well, it's really important to have both because there are two types of different intelligences, to say it in some way. So our mind is all about the intellect. We also have our subconscious mind, which is the programmed mind, so to speak, and which also keeps us alive at the same time. However, then we also have this very unique wisdom that each of us carries based on our experiences, and that, in my understanding, is stored in our heart. And our heart also is where we can find courage. Our mind is where we find fear usually, and our heart is where we find courage. And as leaders, we need lots of courage, especially when it comes to standing up against mainstream narratives that might harm our team or ourselves or our organization or humanity, right? Our communities. So we want that. And then also intuition is another gift that we find in the treasure chest of our heart. Also, I want to say that we connect with other people and with the world around us through the electromagnetic frequency of our heart, which is 1,000 times stronger than the electromagnetic frequency of our head brain, right? So these are important things to remember. We neglect our heart far too much, and then it has a lot of other meanings. For example, in my other framework, the new paradigm leadership, heart is one of the 4 elements. And why is that? Because people are the heart of any organization, right? So that's why heart-centered and people-centered leadership, in my view, go hand in hand.
Thank you. So can you help us define distinctive uniqueness? And why is it so important for standing out as a leader today?
Distinctive uniqueness, yes, well, because it's what makes you unique, and leaders do not blend in. Leaders stand out. That's why they are leaders, right? If you don't dare to stand out, we will not be able to recognize you as a potential leader. And so it's very, very important for leaders specifically. It's really important for everybody to know what your unique brilliance really consists of. What are your strengths? What are your talents? What's your knowledge? Your maybe unique character traits that are really beneficial, or whatever it is for everybody. Our unique abilities, capabilities, and we really want to do a deep dive on those and write them all down and become very clear on them. Because oftentimes we think what comes easy to us is not valuable, but that's not true. It's just a special talent that we have that makes it easier for us to do that thing, right? Some people are great at learning languages, for example, or at playing instruments, and other people are great at completely different things, at math or whatever. And there's a reason behind that, because We are all meant to be different because we're meant to complement each other. And that's why it's so important to do that for yourself. And as a leader, actually, also for your team. You need to really be clear on what the unique brilliance of each of your team members is so that you can best assign your team members to their individual responsibilities and potentially also sometimes have to change some, although it might be written in the job description, right? But it's really, really important for us leaders to be able to say what that is, because actually also once we gain greater clarity on what our own unique brilliance is, our distinctive uniqueness, how also how we are perceived, by the way, right? Uh, then the easier it becomes to understand what it is in other people and to see it in other people. And that's really important as a leader to recognize the value that's in your team. And oftentimes a lot of leaders or so-called leaders don't make an effort to even find out what that is, to even get to know their people, because they don't make an effort to get to know themselves.
Okay, so thank you very much for that. So you speak about body and energy conscious presence. What does that actually look like in a real world leadership situation?
Well, the thing is, when we talk about business presence or leader presence, then we talk about, okay, how do you dress? How do you talk? What is your body language? But one thing that informs everything, really flows into everything, is your energy. And we don't talk about that much, do we? So our energy, because we are energy, it flows into everything we think, we feel, we say, we do, everything, right? And it actually precedes us. So if you walk into a room and your energy is off, people will perceive that, even though your words may be, you know, may be chosen correctly for that situation. But if your words contradict your energy usually wins because your energy speaks louder than your words, right? And it also speaks faster than your words. Oftentimes we hear it takes 7 seconds to make a first impression, but in reality, it only takes zero point zero 0.07 seconds for our brains to figure out whether we can trust someone when we are confronted with somebody. So that's much, much quicker. And that's about our energy. Now, energy is already in the room before we even walk into it. And it's also transmitted over the phone, over a podcast. It doesn't matter. There's no distance or to energy. So whether it's remote or not, that energy is always transmitted. We constantly interact on an energetic level, whether we are aware of that or not. So we better use it more consciously.
Oh, thank you, Regina. So for someone who wants to differentiate themselves as a leader or move into leadership, what are the most important shifts they need to make?
What are the what? Sorry.
What are the most important shifts that they need
Oh,
to
shit.
make?
Okay. Yeah, okay, I heard it. Thank you. Yeah, there's a little bit of a noise. So, okay, so the most important shifts, well, I would say get to know yourself better. Like self leadership is the most important piece of any leadership. If you're not great at self leadership, it's because you haven't made the effort really to get to know yourself, to have that self awareness, and then to also develop what needs to be developed in yourself, and to be honest enough to look at yourself and to get feedback from other people at the same time, right? Because sometimes there's a gap between what we think, how we are perceived, and how we are really perceived. We can only know about that gap and what the real how people perceive us if we ask. So that's why feedback is really, really important. If we want to grow, we need to be open to feedback. And we need to be, of course, yes, open to improving our communication skills unless we are already great at it, because that's just really key in a leadership position. You need to be able to communicate also in situations when it's difficult, because once you are a leader, you are a leader in the good, the bad, and the ugly. Not, you don't choose your situations, right? Like, let's say you're a leader in an organization or of a community, you will be a leader while the times are good and while the times are not so great. And that's also something you want to be prepared for and have that resilience for, and that at the same time the confidence and the self-belief that you can make it through that, and that it's not necessarily something personal when a difficult situation shows up. So we also need to be able to take a step back from the situation and be able to evaluate, right? Because if you're in a leadership position, you're visible. And when you're visible, whether you're visible as a speaker, as an entrepreneur, or as a leader in a leadership role in a large company, it doesn't matter. You're visible, and when you're visible, not everybody will like you, and that's okay. So you got to be able to deal with that too, and stop taking that personal. It's more important to stay true to yourself and to your values, and to also let other people know what they are. Be authentic about those values, right? Because that's how people then know who they're dealing with. And they can choose whether they want to work with you or listen to you or be in your team. And I think that's really important. Everybody, life is about choices. So if we are wanting to control other people's choices, that never works very long, right? Does it?
Okay, Regina. So you have answered most of my questions, but I still have like a few here for you. What are the most common challenges that your clients face when they are trying to advance their careers or step into leadership roles?
Well, one is self-belief. Right? Sometimes we underestimate ourselves, our possibilities, our preparedness for a specific role. For example, we think we cannot apply for a role because check all the boxes in the job description or in the requirements list, and that's not true, because if we knew everything already in that role, then it would not be growth, and then why would we want to grow? Then we can stay where we are, right? So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, yes, team engagement is a big is a is a big topic for a lot of people. And in that context, delegation, how to delegate. Because delegation cannot just happen in the moment when you need it. It needs preparation, and there are specific ways to prepare. It also requires what I said earlier, that you actually got to know your team in advance, right? Because otherwise, how are you going to delegate if you don't know your team? It requires trust in both directions. They need to trust you, and you need to trust them to pass those tasks or responsibilities on to them. And so there's a lot in that, within that delegation topic. I've written quite a few LinkedIn articles in my Conscious Leadership Edge LinkedIn newsletter, so people can sign up for that for free, subscribe, and they can read those articles. They're all there.
Okay, Regina. So this is my final question for you. I am African, and this particular question is very unique to me as well and to my audience. So I know you recently spent some time in Africa, right?
Yeah.
So what were you
Yes.
doing there? And what insights or experience stayed with you?
Yeah. I personally love traveling to Africa because, first of all, very very egotistically, I love many types of African music, especially sub-Saharan, right? And and I do some African dances, like a little bit of ndombolo, a little bit of sabar. I'm not perfect at it, but I love it. Some West African, and I love to watch it. So that's yeah. So that's definitely one of the reasons why I love to travel there. But I also have always found great people to work with. I have been invited to speak a few times at conferences and then have oftentimes stayed longer than was necessary because I just wanted to get to know the location, the way people live. I'm very curious, adventurous as a person, have always been. That's why I also probably have lived in several different places in Latin America and Europe and in the US. And so, for example, when I go to South Africa for a conference, I would stay a month instead of just like a few days for the conference, right? Or I spent a month in Uganda, I spent a month in Rwanda. In Rwanda, I was working with a group of young people who had a project. We did a workshop for 5 days. I was teaching them my powerful leadership transformation, the content of that framework, and some other topics. And that was a lot of fun. And we did actually an exchange against accommodation because they just had finished their studies. They had a new project. They didn't have a huge budget, right? So, and then what else? In Ghana, I helped a project prepare women for job interviews. That was actually my first visit, apart from Morocco many years ago for a vacation, but to Africa a few years ago. And then because in the past I'd always traveled more in Latin America, and some other places. But anyway, so I was there, and then I just actually this year I went on a shorter trip to Ivory Coast. I've been to Cameroon. I hosted a summit there with two other women, and that was a while ago now too. And then I was even on TV at CRTV. It was a lot of fun. It was very short term, but a lot of fun talk show, and we even danced. And some radio shows that I've done online with them, but also in person. Yeah, and so it yeah I've also done other projects like webinars with partners in Zambia and Zimbabwe, and I was going to do an event in Nigeria, but that was in 2020, and it was unfortunately canceled in 2020. I had a lot of plans in Africa, actually, and it was all canceled, and not all of it has come back. So I always love to go. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. Yes, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a fun conversation. And yes, I thought you were from Nigeria. That was my guess. And I know quite a few people also from Nigeria, especially in New York. I met quite a few, and have some friends from there, and who are still there. So it's definitely still in my plans to travel to Nigeria one day. That's definitely something. Um, so where can people find me? Well, there's my LinkedIn profile, also my LinkedIn newsletter that I really would suggest that you subscribe to because I publish articles on leadership. If you're into leadership of self and others, there are always articles published every Friday, usually. And I have a YouTube channel, Regina Huber, and my podcast, Rise to Lead, which is on all the different podcast platforms. So of course, I have more places, everything that I mentioned, including my book, links to my books on Amazon and whatnot, also on my website, transformyourperformance.com. Thank you.